Okay, I believe I'm live on YouTube. Perfect. And we will start recording. Okay, perfect. Good morning. Good morning. Hope you all had a great weekend. Today is 9/11, so just a quick moment of silence for the people that passed back in 2001. It's 22 years already. Okay, so I'm going to jump in now to some of the news that we've had for the past 2 weeks. We didn't have Monday Mortgage Minute last week because it was Labor Day, so we kind of have double the news. The Fed could be looking at pausing rate hikes this month, which could continue to be good news for the markets. There are talks from different Fed members, but there's nothing solid yet, and their next meeting isn't until September 20th, so we'll see. My concern with that news, or with them whether they're going to pause or not, because they haven't really decided, is consumer price index comes out on Wednesday this week. I told you guys this month that, or I told you guys this month we could see it increase because of last year's month-to-month reading. And now experts are starting to make predictions about the same thing. I saw over the weekend inflation is predicted to increase 0.4% to 3.6% year over year. Bonds haven't reacted negatively to the news. I mean, they opened up a little bit negative, but not too much. But we could be in for a rough couple of days. However, I do believe this is the last month we'll see inflation increase, only because the numbers in October and November become harder to overcome. And we know inflation is calculated on a rolling 12-month basis. So the reason why we're going to see that increase is because last year's, what are we in September? So last year's August was only 0.1% month over month. So now we remove that 0.1%. Even if we come in at 0.2% month over month this year for August, that's going to signal an increase of inflation year over year. So that number was so low last year, just like July was basically flat last year, which is why we saw July increase, and now we're probably going to see August's increase as well. Starting in September, those numbers jump to 0.4 for September and October. So 0.4, 0.4 makes it much more difficult to show an increase in inflation over those 12 months. And so we are going to start to see that react towards the rates, but that's not going to be till October where we get the September numbers, unfortunately. I do think that we're going to see a huge decline in core CPI, or core consumer price index, which removes energy and food prices. And it's made up mostly of shelter costs. We're seeing rents year over year either not increasing or lowering in some markets, which is a good thing for CPI. All in all, if you have a client that just went under contract this weekend, make sure they're locked before Wednesday. The last thing you want is that client backing out because rates got worse. You don't want that loan officer to risk it and think that inflation is going to come back positive and then rates are much better. You might as well lock it in, be safe, especially if that client is comfortable with what that payment looks like. Home prices rose 1.5% from June to July, which is a crazy acceleration in this market. That was nationally, but this is according to Black Knight. We're up 2.3% year over year with a pace of 7.7% by the end of the year, if we're going by Black Knight's numbers. Remember, normal appreciation is anywhere between 3 to 5% year over year. That's typically what a quote unquote normal market is, which we haven't seen since about 2018. South Florida is a different animal, obviously. Now, I mentioned this is from Black Knight because there are quite a few different home price appreciation reports we typically look at, including the Case-Shiller, which is the favorite one because it's usually the most accurate. That report is always a couple months behind, and that did come out for June. It showed we had an increase of 0.7% month to month, and we're flat year over year currently. The biggest markets so far this year are Chicago at 4.2%, Cleveland at 4.1%, and New York at 3.4%. New York still surprises me that we're seeing positive home price appreciation just because of those overpriced homes. Remember, jobs is the other current factor on interest rates, since job growth is considered inflationary and the Fed needs it to break in order for rates to react positively. Rates have been doing pretty well so far this month, and it's because the Bureau of Labor Statistics reported that unemployment increased from 3.5% to 3.8%. And the ADP employment report, which is for private payroll, showed a weaker than forecasted job growth for August with 177,000 jobs created. Most job gains are coming from the services industry or sector too, which will probably slow as we lean into the end of the year. People are saying wages are increasing, but the numbers on a national level show that job stayers income have increased 5.9% year over year, and job changers on average increased 9.5% year over year, which is pretty much currently outpacing inflation. Which is why I always tell people specifically, if you're looking to get a pay raise, switch jobs for some reason. Whenever you switch jobs, you happen to get much more than what you actually would if you stayed. And the numbers have always showed that. I think last year's, I didn't write them down, but I think last year's job movers were like at 16% and job stayers were like at 8%. Tomorrow, I'll be doing a presentation for a brokerage about how to convince sellers how to sell in this market. And it's more of a data / financial back presentation. I'll be showing you guys that next week. I was trying to have it ready by today so I can show you guys first, but it's not 100% done yet. But it's basically going to consider the fact that right now, a lot of people have a lot of debt and very little savings, right? And so if that person's on the fence on whether they should sell or not, they're looking at getting a 7% interest rate. They have a 3%. They may not really have a 3% rate. If you're talking about 25% APR on credit card balances, you're talking about 8-9% APR on your car loans and things like that. Once you add in those blended rates into the factor of your 3% interest rate, most of the time, that blended rate is anywhere between 6 to 7% on all of your bills that you have. And so it's kind of just breaking that down for the seller and letting them know that it is still a good idea for them to sell that home, pay off all their debt, keep some of the money that they're going to make from that sale as well, and kind of start fresh and even be able to upgrade and get a higher purchase price house and not pay as much more or even anything more than what they're currently paying, because they would get rid of a lot of that 25 to 29% APR debt that people have, which is pretty much, I think right now, the amount of debt that people are holding is like over trillions of dollars. Yeah, over like $1 trillion in credit card debt specifically. So it's a good little way to kind of tell people, hey, you're not moving from a 3 to a 7. Technically speaking, you are, but this is everything that you pay for every single month. You wipe that out. You're able to still have money left over and put maybe 20% down on the home, whatever, and actually be able to upgrade and save money. So we'll talk about that next week and kind of break that down and show them, see the numbers there once that presentation is done. I don't know if you guys have any scenarios, any questions from stuff that happened last week. Last week was the first week that Hometown Heroes basically dished out any sort of extra money that they had from loans that didn't close. It was about $3.4 million, and they were gone in 15 minutes. Luckily, I had one client under contract that we were hoping we could do the Florida bond with him, but we decided to try and lock him in Hometown Heroes. I had somebody on my lock desk on standby right at 10 a.m. They locked him in, and we were able to secure those funds for that specific client. They're going to be doing that until their funds run out every single Tuesday. So tomorrow's the next Tuesday. They're probably going to have less than 3 million. It's probably going to go even quicker. It's not a guarantee that your clients will get those funds, but same thing. If you have a client that just went under contract, maybe you want to wait. Especially if they would qualify for Hometown Heroes, have that loan officer lock them in first thing tomorrow morning, or try to. Don't tell the client yet. Try to work behind the scenes, because obviously the last thing you want to do is tell a client we're trying this and it doesn't work. They get their hopes up, it doesn't work, and then they end up backing out for whatever reason. Any questions, any scenarios you guys have? I see some new faces in here. Yeah, Narlian.
It's actually Narlene. Thank you.
Oh, sorry, Narlene.
No, it's fine. So let me ask you a question. With the interest rate being the way it is, would you recommend that buyers lock in a rate at and with an adjustable rate mortgage, possibly 5, 7, or 10-year ARM, just to get something small and then possibly refinance before the adjustment period?
The ARMs that are out right now are not that much different than what 30-year fixed rates are, because ARMs go based off of the US prime rate. And to me, ARMs are extremely risky. It's kind of what happened in 07, 08. If you guys don't know what's going on with Canada's housing market, go ahead, do some Google searching right now. A lot of them locked into ARMs when their prime rate was extremely low. And as the market got really bad, a lot of those adjustable rates started to adjust really, really fast on them. Every 6 months is usually how it works. And a lot of people are now not able to afford their homes, and they're going through a serious, really bad housing crisis up in Canada right now, specifically because of those adjustable rate mortgages that they took out a couple years ago. I typically don't suggest it. I try not to touch it, but if a client understands the risk, then we'll go ahead and do it. It's the same thing. It's happening on a smaller scale with people that did HELOCs as well for condos a couple years ago. Had a couple phone calls, people trying to refinance out, even though we tell them those, those second mortgages are adjustable for you. Until it hits them, they really don't know or don't seem to care. And that payment changes for them every single month. Sometimes it could be, $600-700. Sometimes it could be $400-500. But if they started at $200 or $300, that's a huge difference for them that they have to consider within their budget. So adjustable rates, I typically am not a fan of, and I wouldn't suggest it. If it's something that is more so that person is financially savvy, then yeah. Am I going to suggest that to a first-time home buyer? Probably not.
Thank you.
No problem. Anybody else got any other questions or scenarios? No, that's it. It's a short Monday Mortgage Minute. Always good. We'll be back next week. I will be doing that presentation for you guys as well. So that should be a little bit fun, so we can see more so data-backed reasons as to assuming a mortgage. Oh, yes. I actually wanted to bring this up. Oh my God, seeing these videos on Instagram drive me nuts. They drive me nuts. I'm not even kidding. Assuming a mortgage. Okay, what you're doing is you're assuming that person's mortgage, but if that seller wants more than that, that person has to come out of pocket. Okay, so for instance, you got a seller, they got $200,000 left on their mortgage, they want $400,000 for that property. You're already trying to assume that first mortgage from that servicer, right? So that means you already, technically speaking, have a first mortgage. They're not going to readjust it and still give you the same interest rate. The reason why you're going to assume that is because that servicer doesn't have to change the payments that are being made or anything like that. Now that $200,000 gap has to come from the buyer. Do they have that money? Sure. Then technically speaking, go through the process of assuming the mortgage with the seller. That's going to take much longer as well. South Florida, in this market, you're going to want a seller that's going to want your client to go through that process. Probably not. And then the second thing is, yes, that money can be financed. Here's the thing. Now you're not doing a first mortgage. You're not doing a conventional loan. You're doing a second mortgage, which is either a HE loan, a amortized 30-year loan, that's a second mortgage, or a HELOC, which is a line of credit. Both of those have interest rates right now in the 10s or 11s. So when you consider that second mortgage, right, let's say you have to come in with 10% down on $400,000. That means that your down payment's $40,000. That means that your total loan amount's $360,000. You took out $200,000 at 3%. Now you have $160,000 at 10% or 11%. When you do that number, it's pretty much the same thing as taking out your own 6.5-7% mortgage anyway, right? And so that's what people don't really want to talk about when it comes to these videos. Technically speaking, can you assume a mortgage? Yeah. Usually the best way to do that is with your mom or dad that doesn't really want to profit off the property, and then go ahead and try that route with them. But if you're trying to do it with a seller that you don't really know, that's an arm's length transaction, it would be very difficult to actually get that done, and it may not even make financial sense for you. Yeah, Gina.
Good morning, and thank you. So what kind of contract, if you end up getting a seller, let's just say they only have $10,000 left on their mortgage, but they're nice and they want to give their house up, not at market value, but like at least get $265,000 for it finance. What kind of a contract is that? Would that still be as is?
Yeah, I mean, the financing would be considered other, but the contract's going to most likely stay the same. But it's not going to make, if you're talking about there's $10,000 left on that mortgage and they want to assume that, it's not going to, they're going to be paying more on their payment than if they were just to take out 265 in general.
Okay, so if I have a seller that has $10,000 left and they want to give it up, but they still want 265,000 for it, I would click other on the as if is contract, and I would just have to make sure.
I'm sorry, Gina, they do have an assumable section on the as is contract under financing.
Oh, I see. Okay, perfect. And then at that moment, I can adjust the other financing to whatever they agree on.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Awesome. Very much.
Yeah. And I'm trying to see here. So $10,000 would be at a 3%. You don't know how much they have left?
Mortgage?
Yeah.
No, not yet. But I think for it to make sense, it would have to be pretty much almost done being paid off. And these people have multiple properties. So, but they still want something for it, but just not double, because this is market value at 850, but they got it at 465. And only assuming it would be the best route for them to get it at that low of a price.
Okay, gotcha. So it's a situation where they kind of have to assume it, basically.
Yeah.
Okay. Because you'd be looking at a total of about $4,700 on the payment, more or less. No, sorry, 47 plus 3, about $5,000 if you were to do 250. If you were to finance 255 and then finance the other 10 at 3% interest rate, because that 455 would be financed at an 11% interest rate, more or less, if we're looking at a second loan. So it'd be at about $5,000 a month on 465, including very low taxes that I didn't really change, or very low homeowners insurance. So that'd probably be much higher. It usually, when you do it 1-for-1, doesn't make sense for the client. But if it's a situation where it's the only way the seller wants to go, then absolutely get it done. And then once the property is the buyers, they can refinance and just do one whole loan together, because at that point would make much more sense for them.
Oh, and they would refinance the 265 portion?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, so you said 265. Sorry, I thought you said 465 for a second. So let me see here. So at 265, they'd be at about $3,200 a month.
Perfect. Okay. All right. Thank you so very much.
No problem. So the 275, we would have that. Yeah, that difference would be, yeah, they would actually probably be at $1,000 less by not assuming the mortgage. Yeah, $2,200 a month. So big difference. Yeah, that I actually was going to make a video on that. I'm glad you asked. I totally forgot when I was writing my notes today. It's a nice headline. If it's something where it's Gina's situation where the sellers, that's the only way they're going to sell it, that's a little bit different. But if the buyer's asking you, you have to let them know that that's their first mortgage, and then they have to come up with the difference. Technically, you can get a second loan. You still have to put 10% down, because those second loans only go up to 90%. And then whatever that second loan is, usually estimate it at 11%, especially right now in this market. And then you'll see those numbers really quickly are not going to make sense for them, and just kind of break that down. But yeah, thank you so much for that question. That was really good. I'm glad that you brought it up. You guys have any other questions? No, that's it. Okay, well, have a happy Monday. Hope you all have a great week. Anything that you need from us, don't hesitate to reach out. And I'll see you guys next Monday.
Thank you.
No problem.
All right. Thanks again, Mike. Appreciate it.
No problem.